Why?
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome in, everybody. Sports Daily. It is August. It is Election Day. It is still very hot outside. Jacob Albracht here alongside Tommy Castor. Chad Chambers producing for us. Back in the studio. Glad to be here with you. The IHOP hotline will be open today, 869-1240, as we make our way through and turn the calendar. This is sort of the month we begin to see football. A lot of practices, a lot of prep work. The high schoolers will get to work here soon. The colleges are getting to work. The NFL preseason starts very quickly here. And we've got this conference realignment stuff lingering, a Major League Baseball trade deadline a little later this afternoon. It's all right here for us. Glad to be here with you on the program. Thanks for listening to us on KFH, maybe on the Odyssey app as well. Thanks for watching us on our video stream. To those tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. I'm going to keep calling it Twitter, Tommy. Is anybody bothered by that?
No,
I'm
calling it. No,
it's not called that anymore.
No, I'm calling it Twitter. And I will. I mean, it'll be a cool day in hell before I call it X. So
I don't care one way or the other. I'm just, a creature of habit, and that's just what I've always called it. So, sorry, Elon. I don't know how to, what is somebody, I don't know, somebody tweets, which is part of the brilliance of Twitter. I don't know what to even say there. So forgive me if that offends you, but I'm going to call it Twitter probably for a little while. I can barely get team mascots changing right. I'm not too concerned about the social media company. Tommy, if I doze off here today, or if you're watching on the video stream, I'm all dressed up, right? I have makeup on.
Looking sharp.
I've been helping the morning show at KWC at 12 News this morning. Shane Kanicki, the morning anchor, is on to Kansas City. We're very happy for him, but they're in the meantime needing a little help. So I went in this morning to help him. It's an election day. I've been up very early this morning, earlier than normal, and I'll be here with you on the show. Then I'll go back up there for the noon newscast, and then I'll shuttle kids around, and then go back up there for the 4 o'clock newscast. And so forgive me if I doze off here, but it's just as hot at 4 a.m. Tommy as it is at whatever time it is right now, 9 a.m.
Well, I'll tell you, I admire your dedication. I mean, you could have very easily said, you know what, I'm not going to do the show today. I've got too many responsibilities on the TV side. But with the trade deadline today, with conference realignment, I knew that you couldn't miss today's show.
No, I can't. I mean, there's too much potentially happening. And, the timing of these Pac-12 meetings probably misses us by just a hair today out on the West Coast time zone. But look, there's a lot of speculation out there. The message boards are going nuts. Everybody thinks their team, their school is the most important, piece in this. Everybody, it's like, you can't have these conversations without somebody taking a shot at somebody else. It's all very interesting, but we've got that out there. We've got the trade deadline. I think we're probably going to see at least one more big one with Justin Verlander, but there's probably just gobs and gobs of moves that are going to be made today across Major League Baseball as we get ready for it. So we're glad to be here. And again, IHOP hotline 869-1240. All right, let's dig into the conference realignment a little bit, because it's fun, and it's one of the few things where everybody just feels free to speculate uncontrollably. So the Oklahoman and Barry Trammell, who's reported on the Big 12, obviously, and the Sooners is a staple there in the state of Oklahoma, had an article out in the Oklahoman about why Colorado and the region sort of telling us why they left. And the piece of that I get, Tommy, which I think is far reaching in all of this, because it seems so obvious to us, but it's clearly not, is that Colorado, that was a tough decision for them to make. And, in the quotes pulled in that story, it doesn't It doesn't seem like they were just itching to get out, but in fact, like hoping to stay in. But the Big 12 just ended up being a better opportunity. And I don't think that's a knock on the Big 12 as much as like these Pac-12 schools were really happy in the Pac-12, right? Like the Pac-12 has its history, its very unique brand, and boy, it has just been lapped by the field here. And because of that, it doesn't have much of a leg to stand on in this meeting today, which we're finally, apparently going to hear what the TV deal is. And some of the reports out on that deal right now are no bueno as it compares to its peers. It is a tough time. And I hate that, like for the Big 12, we celebrate this, right? Like it's exciting. Colorado's coming back. And who else are we going to add? But that does mean that the Pac-12 will be walking the plank to some degree. And I don't like that part of it either.
Well, I think that one element of this that I have at least overlooked, and I'm not sure we've really discussed it a whole lot, is the fact that none of these schools in the Pac-12, you would think, want to be seen as the ones that killed the conference, right? Like there's that in there a little bit, right? And I think Colorado, probably to an extent, like they knew that there was going to be a better opportunity in the Big 12, but maybe they didn't want to be, the first one to go to really trigger everything else in that domino effect. I would imagine that some of these other schools, whether it's Arizona or Arizona State or Oregon or Washington, if they end up leaving, whether it's for the Big 12 or the Big 10, they don't want to be perceived as the schools that are the ones that are killing the Pac-12 either. And maybe you can go back and you can look at as soon as USC and UCLA chose to leave, like that was kind of the start of it. And I think it really was, because obviously that's monumental, and the two massive brands leaving that conference to go to the Big 10. But, that was what, a year ago or even longer than that. And the Pac-12 has remained at least semi-viable since that time. They haven't been aggressive in expansion. They haven't done anything to try to re-strengthen themselves. But I would imagine that any of these schools that are mulling opportunities and offers to jump ship, even if it's a better offer for them, they don't want to be the ones that will be perceived as the ones that killed the conference.
I saw that a couple of places yesterday. And it's such a strange thing to be worried about, right? Like, number one, the Big 10 killed the Pac-12, right? USC and UCLA, if the Pac-12 is to die, or at least the former version of it, it's going to be because USC and UCLA left. Period. Right? Like that's it. It'd be like if Kansas would have accepted an offer to the Big 10 and had been concerned about killing the Big 12. Sorry, don't flatter yourself. USC and UCLA leaving killed the Pac-12, right? As for whatever it was. So it's odd to me that there is a fear of that. Like nobody, if Arizona left and came to the Big 12, nobody on the planet is going to sit there and be like, man, Arizona really killed the Pac-12. Nobody's sitting here now saying Colorado, that's what did them in. No, people,
Yeah.
but that's,
but
as a part of this,
that's a contributing factor. And, the Pac-12, I think that they've operated under this mentality that even with USC and UCLA gone, they could still be viable, trying to work on whatever media deal this is. And if it turns out to be a bad offer to these schools, I think you can point to that for sure as a major contributing factor, but I guess that there's the question of really how important is loyalty. And in a situation like this, loyalty is not important at all. You go where the money is.
Well, loyalty is important, but it's not at your own detriment, right? Like you can't get left behind in this world because of loyalty, because nobody knows what the future is, right? And because that future is so uncertain, because there are these juggernauts in the SEC and the Big 10 looming, you cannot, try to be loyal in spite of your own future, because that will only get you so far anyway. The Pac-12 thinking that they could survive and be okay without these schools and not expanding and doing all these things, that's been their greatest flaw. That and letting the Big 12 media beat them to a media deal, obviously. but not being forward thinking enough to understand how big a deal USC and UCLA were leaving is. Say what you want about Bob Bowlesby. He at least acknowledged and understood that Texas and Oklahoma leaving meant something had to change immediately as they add the teams. And at the time it was like, okay, are these teams needle movers and blah, blah, blah. And, there was of course trash talk at that, but the reality is there are schools all over the country that are looking to take that next step and do these great things. And the Pac-12 has just never seemed to be willing to do that. It's that pretentiousness that has been, the doom of them up to this point. And I don't know what it is that still lingers. Like you have Colorado in the regions, like, yeah, we're really like, that was a hard decision and the Pac-12 just couldn't get it there for us. Like, what is everybody clinging to in the Pac-12? I don't quite understand that. And that league has been so dang naive from the beginning of all this, even before USC and UCLA left, when the Big 12 was looking for a lifeline. Like, what did you think was going to happen here? Did you really have this misconception that you could go toe-to-toe, even just with the SEC? Let's not even include the Big Ten, just the SEC. Like, things have been for so long, Tommy, shifting to the SEC with ESPN and all the attention and, like everything has shifted there. If you couldn't see that, you're being too naive to survive. So I don't understand what these schools now that are so worried about, and this is just fodder from, rumors in the message boards. Like, what are you concerned about with being the ones that killed the Pac-12? The Pac-12 killed itself.
Yeah. Well,
I think that has been behind the whole time.
I think that part of it, and I want to be very clear, I have no sympathy for the Pac-12 as a conference because they've been refusing to adapt and evolve. They've sat on their hands. They've thumbed their nose at potential solutions to help them out because it wasn't prestigious enough for them. So I have no sympathy for the conference as a whole. That being said, though, I think you have to go back in time to understand why the Pac-12 feels the way that it does. The Pac-12 has never been through this before. They've never been threatened before. The foundation of their conference has never been threatened before, unless I'm missing something from a long time ago. You look at the Big 12, they've constantly, it seems like, been in a state of potential change and teams leaving. I mean, you go back all the way to, what was it, 2010, when Colorado initially left and Nebraska, Missouri, A&M, they bailed, and people had the Big 12 on their deathbed back then. And the conference, what did they do? They adapted and they survived. And now we're going through it again. Like, this has been fairly common for the Big 12. So the one thing that the Big 12 can hang its hat on is that they are survivors. They survive. They adapt. They grow. They evolve. The Pac-12 has never been through this before. So I think that what they did was kind of rest on their laurels and sit back and just say, oh, we're the Pac-12. It's going to be fine. Like, there's not going to be an issue here. We're still going to be the conference of champions when it's all said and done, and we don't have to do anything. And that's been the completely wrong direction to take.
It has. And that's still no excuse. Like, I don't like to see the SEC succeed, right? Like, I get tired of it, but never has it been like this. I've never been in the camp of like, oh yeah, my league's better than the SEC. There are years, right, where you can have better years than them, but in totality, like, it's been so obvious to everybody for so long. The Big 12 has always been a little bit, they tried to save and not lose Texas by letting the Longhorn Network shenanigans. It didn't work, but it was an idea, right? Because they've been trying to avoid the inevitable for a long time. And finally, it just wasn't. It was inevitable, right? Because the two of the biggest brands in college sports existed outside the SEC. It was, it really wasn't a fit, Tommy. Like, Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12, at some point, you're like, God, they are a little bit miscast here. And so it did take that jarring effect to sort of wake everybody up to, like, we can still be a great league without them. And so you had the additions there to get the league, at least from an on the field competitive nature. Like, we think we're going to be all right with these schools. That's the first step. The second step is, like, do you still generate the excitement? And that's where Brett Yormark's taking it to another level. The Pac-12 hasn't done anything, right? They haven't done anything. They tried this scheduling alliance, which was such an odd
Joke.
thing from the very beginning. We're all like, well, what does that even mean, right? Like, okay. And then they get poached, of course, by their allies or whatever. No, like, proof is in the pudding. Either pony up or shut up, right? Like, you either pay or you don't. Scheduling alliance. So they've tried to do everything they could without doing anything. They just blew an opportunity to add San Diego State. Like, what are we doing here? Pac-12?
Yeah.
You don't think San Diego State's good enough? What are you paying attention to? Like, what part of negotiations are you having with networks? And maybe the network said San Diego State's not good enough. But you know what you got to do at that point? You got to prove it, right? You got to add some teams and say, look how much better this product is. Now, like, let's add San Diego State and Boise State and Fresno State and some of these other schools. Let's have a really competitive league, and we'll prove it to you that we are a better product without, USC and UCLA playing in empty stadiums because they're not elite level teams in that whatever given year. It has been behind the whole time. And as we see, go look at the quotes from these Colorado regions. Like, it's like, we didn't want to have to do this, but we had to do this, right? Like, we didn't have a choice. And that's what a lot of schools face today as a TV deal may get presented. Like,
right.
Like, please, Pac-12, give us anything to cling to here so we don't have to do this. Like, we have to do this. And I just don't think it's there. I don't think it's there. And
I don't think it is either. And I think we're obviously going to, you would think, find out here very shortly what that deal is. There's been a lot of speculation, a lot of different rumors about what that deal is. Primarily streaming is one rumor that I heard, where teams are getting somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million a piece. That's not going to cut it. That's not good enough. And when you've got a school like Arizona, who by a lot of accounts has been pursued by the Big 12, and they know that they can walk in and get $31.7 million a year right away from the Big 12. $20 million, if that's the number, that's not good enough. $25 million probably isn't good enough. Now, I think some of it depends upon the exit fee you have to pay and all of that. And,
there
is
will
it going to be
no
worth
exit fee? There's
that's
no
right.
exit fee.
I forgot
The
about
media
that. So I
deal
guess that's easy for.
expires.
That's
Yeah,
right. I
it's
totally
easy.
forgot about that. Okay, so it would be super easy, even if the number is 25 or in the upper 20s for a school like Arizona to walk away. So, I mean, I'm not sure that this could have been bungled any worse. And I know that the commissioner, and I've been hard on George Klavikov multiple times, and I think for good reason. It's not only his fault.
No.
Yeah, it's the
No.
the member schools.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of blame to go around. He's the front man for it. He's the spokesman. I think the thing that he did wrong was, try to make everybody believe that there was this awesome media deal when clearly there wasn't, and everybody knew that there wasn't, and he was clearly lying to everybody. Like, that was a mistake. I mean, I think when we go back in time, when this is all done and the dust settles and we look back on all of this, man, it's going to be really easy to point out all the different points throughout the last couple of years where the Pac-12 has absolutely failed.
The one thing I want to keep an eye on today is the last lifeboat effort might be, let's just pretend that it's Apple. Let me say this, though. There's a lot of pieces to this that we are not smart enough to understand, right? When it comes to realignment and, what it takes to join a league, all the partners that need to sign off on that for all the various reasons, what it takes to leave, how that impacts your, alumni base, how that impacts your branding, your imaging. It's a lot more complicated than we want to make it out to be. So let me preface that and acknowledge that, please, that I don't know the inner workings of a TV media rights grants deal, but I do sometimes feel like I am blessed with a logical brain and a quick processing brain for what we have to do for a living, where it's like, okay, let's take this information, let's digest it, and let's try to make sense of it. And so sometimes we get simple with it. The one thing I do want to watch for today, because, my inference tells me that if it was, let's say it's Apple at the table or Amazon, right? And they want to make splashes in sports and they have a lot of resources. If I were the Pac 12 right now, I would go to the table and I would be very upfront and say, here's the deal. I know you want in. You're only offering us 20, but here's what's going to happen if you don't offer that offer. Okay. We're going to lose potentially X, Y, and Z. And now your product's not as good. Do you really want to jump into the college sports world with some combination of the Pac 12 leftovers in the Mountain West? Or would you rather pay a little bit more now, get us a number that we can take to the table to these presidents, keep the league intact? If I'm the Pac 12, look, I can try to get them on board with streaming, but you have got to get the money up. Can't do both. So that's like a last ditch effort that I'm kind of just sort of hanging to. And that's where it's like, well, I don't know what Amazon and Apple and all that, like, I don't know what their motivations are. Like, but if I'm the Pac 12, that's my play today. Like, that's my play. One, can we expand? Right? Like, are you comfortable if we expand? And two, if you don't bring more to the table, what you think you're getting, what you think you might be able to get is going to be gone. So raise that number. Well, you got 2 hours. Let's go. That's it. That's the only thing I can think of.
It's been very easy to be logical at multiple steps in this process. We just know the Pac-12 has not been logical basically at all during this entire process.
They haven't been
So we
honest
can,
with themselves.
and we can come in with logic and this is what should happen. Pac-12 hasn't given us really any reason to believe that they can do that.
So what are the latest rumors? Tommy's been, scouring the message boards, which is, just that's the Lord's work. But we have some rumors and rumblings and these kinds of things. We'll go over that again. We've had, this is a fun topic too, if you're not being poached, but you're the poacher, because we can sort of go through these scenarios. So what could this look like for the Big 12? We'll discuss that. Sports Daily, your thoughts, 869-1240. You can get in touch with us on social media. You can leave comments on our video stream. Super easy. You can find it on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever it is that you want to find it. You can leave us your comments there. We'll be right back. More Sports Daily right after this. Happy Election Day, everybody. Don't forget to go vote. Last day to do that. You got to go to the right place. It's hot. Tommy, I set my alarms and everything to go off about 4 this morning. And Jad has no sympathy for me, by the way, right now. Jad's up that early like every day.
It's like an everyday thing for Jad.
Yeah. So I set my coffee brewer to 7 cups of coffee. Normally I'd set it to 5, and I probably have 4 of those. But I set it to 7. I took the first large majority of that with me to the TV station this morning to get through. I just poured another one. Now, you know me, I drink HTO coffee every day at home. But I need, how many cups of coffee am I going to drink today? Like that's the question. We may.
Is there an over under? Like, is there a line that we're looking at here?
Yeah, I know that coffee is one of those things where like you'll get a different study every day that it's good for you, and then too much is bad for you. I'm pretty sure like 10 cups a day is not good for you. It may outweigh the benefits, but some coffee is good, and the coffee at HTO is great. So in the spirit of me not falling asleep here, let's give away a coffee card today, Jad, and a tea card. So the coffee card will work for you only at the East location at 21st and 127th, so you can get some coffee there. The iced tea card will work at either location, that East location or the West location at 13th and Tyler. Help you cool off, as it's supposed to be like 106 today. Not a record, but close. And you'll be able to get tea and coffee soon in Derby as well. But we'll give that away right now to the first caller, 869-1240. Get you some coffee, some tea on us. Try those iced coffees. That's what all the kids are raving about, Tommy. I'm, straight hot black coffee for me, but that iced coffee stuff, that's what TikTok talks about, I think. And we've got it there for you at HTO. So good luck. Jad will get us a winner while we continue to discuss conference realignment. And the thought is there's a meeting today. The expectation is the money won't be good enough. And then some of these teams like Arizona, who have been waiting to see the money to make a decision, will get into the discussions. And Arizona, by all accounts, has been the most active in, the pre-discussions to some degree. So we get into this, game now of who's going to go where. And that's where the message boards get really fun, right? Like if you remember back to the Big 12, Tech and TCU, I think, were going to be Pac-12 schools, and KU was on to the Big 10, and Kansas State wasn't going to have a home. And what happens with Oklahoma State? And like, it was a hot mess. None of it was true, right? Message boards are that way because, again, and I've said this before, on message boards, you get somebody who talked to somebody who knows somebody's cousin's uncle's friend who is an assistant and overheard that XYZ. So they're all kind of full of it, right? And until you find your trusted people that you're like, okay, this person actually is connected, and they are usually pretty spot on with this stuff. And you can find those. Some themes that are constant is that Arizona has absolutely been discussing things and is a candidate. Outside of that, everything seems pretty speculative to me, Tommy. And you know what? You sent me to one. Like the weird thing is this all does sort of begin to point back to, four corner schools. But you send me one last night from an Arizona State message board, Tommy, that just sort of includes themselves in that. Man, I haven't heard a word about Arizona State being a legitimate candidate.
It wasn't that long ago that was the primary topic, that the Big 12 would be interested in pursuing the four corner schools. And then that sort of went away. Like that kind of went quiet for a while. And then, started talking about, well, Utah's not interested, and the Pac-12 is going to do this and whatever. That might be kind of bubbling back up to the surface a little bit here as we get closer to it. But you're right. I mean, basically, when you're looking at message boards, what you're trying to do is you're trying to look at multiple message boards that have common themes and pull the ones that like all kind of say the same thing. Arizona, it seems like, is the one that is probably the most imminent. We don't know. We don't know for sure. We don't know if they're going to go to the Big 12, but that seems to be the constant rumor that, they are, if there is going to be a school that comes to the Big 12 right away, it's going to be Arizona. That's kind of the constant. I know that the Board of Regents in Arizona, they have a meeting scheduled for this afternoon. You would think, presumably, to discuss whatever this media deal is that George Klavikoff presents to the schools this morning. What's interesting about the Arizona Board of Regents is that we're not talking just about the University of Arizona. They also oversee Arizona State. So I would imagine, and I don't know the way things work inside Board of Regents meetings and executive sessions and things like that, but I would imagine it would be, wouldn't you think, a priority for the Arizona Board of Regents to not split up Arizona and Arizona State. If I'm inferring that correctly, then there could very easily be a discussion where the Board of Regents say, hey, University of Arizona, it's a good offer for you to go to the Big 12, but the only way we're comfortable signing off on it is if you take Arizona State with you.
Yeah, they talk a big game now, and we see that. Oklahoma used to say the same thing at their state government. They used to say the same thing. Can't split Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Oh wait, SEC, you're offering the Sooners how much money? I got a lot of voters there in the Norman area, an Oklahoma alum, and I got to convince them that they can't go do better for themselves and make this gob of money because Oklahoma State's here too, and they got to take. No, it doesn't like that. They talk a big game there, but that's not realistic. Like, if Arizona has a chance to go do something great and Arizona State doesn't, good for Arizona. Like, they're not going to hold back Arizona because Arizona State can't get the same thing. Now, what is interesting, I think that there could be interest in Arizona State from the Big 12, certainly, because it continues to help you into the Phoenix market, which is great. I just haven't heard Arizona State, and I haven't known why. Like, I haven't known the reason for that, because geographically it would make sense. I think it fits. I think they're a big enough brand. But look, if Arizona has the opportunity to do something that Arizona State doesn't, it's not Arizona's fault. If Kansas had the opportunity to go to the Big 10, they didn't. You can't hold them back from doing that because of Kansas State. Like, you just can't do that. That's not how this works. I don't even know how you could ever justify that. I know you're trying to assist and do your due diligence to help the other school, but I just imagine this scenario, and we'll use Oklahoma as an example again. The SEC comes, knocks on the door, and says, we want OU, we want to pay them whatever stupid, obscene amount of money it is. And you're a state lawmaker, and you're like, yeah, but you got to take Oklahoma State too. And they said, no, take it or leave it. We'll take Oklahoma. It's like, okay, fine, take Oklahoma. We'll figure it out. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, right. I think that there is, an opportunity there for that strength in numbers play to come in for the Big 12, where if the Board of Regents, if they did posture a little bit and say, okay, Big 12, we'd be okay with the University of Arizona coming over if you bring Arizona State with them, if they can come along for the ride. And that's a little bit different than the situation of Oklahoma going to the SEC. Like, that's a no-brainer. And I don't think that the Big 12 would necessarily balk at that. Like, I don't think that they would say, oh no, like, we don't want Arizona State. I think they'd say, all right, I mean, it's not as big of a draw, but I think we want to take Arizona State, strength in numbers, right? I'm not sure that the Big 12, like the SEC would be like, no, we're not taking Oklahoma State. We only want OU.
But
I think this is different than that.
Why would it be that much different than like Oregon and Oregon State, right? Or Washington and Washington State? I just don't think,
because
because
the conference that's pursuing allegedly Oregon and Washington is the Big 10, which those seem to be the conference that's the conference that all along those two schools presumably have wanted to go to. So if the Big 10, and they're in a position of strength, the Big 12 is too, but the Big 10, they're not in any danger of anything. If they were to say, no, we want Oregon, but not Oregon State, or we want Washington, but not Washington State, those two Board of Regents would be like, okay, cool. No big deal. I think the Big 12 wouldn't balk at having Arizona State in their conference alongside Arizona.
No, it's not that they balk at them. It's that they might have a different plan to the end game, right? Maybe Arizona fits because of the basketball brand and because of some other things, but Arizona State doesn't quite fit, and you don't know exactly what you want to do, and you have to appease these networks, right? And I think if you're the Big 12 too, you have to think about the next round of negotiations, right? So it's not that you're balking at anybody, but the reason that you might be hesitant, because they've guaranteed, right, Power 5 membership and additions getting in, doing this thing. But you do, if you're the Big 12, have to continuously evaluate in 5 or 6 years in 2031, does this school enhance our brand at the table, right? And so I do think right now the Big 12 is in a position of strength in that way, that they have the ability to think about the next one now while they live in this one. If they don't think that that's an advantage, if they think, and this is where the presidents come into play too, because you have to get them on board. They have to vote on this. Remember, the Big 12 doesn't just get to pick and choose. Like, it has to be voted on by the members. So put yourself in, put yourself in Texas Tech shoes, put yourself in Kansas State shoes, and you're genuinely trying to evaluate this as a long-term play. It's like, all right, guys, we've been through this negotiation now. Do we honestly think that the next time we sit down with ESPN and Fox, that Arizona State hurts us or helps us make more money? I think that's an honest question.
I don't think it hurts them at all. I think that if you're going back to the direction and the strategy of the four corner schools, I think it makes a lot of sense. What's interesting about Utah, and we could probably talk about this. We could talk about Utah after the break, but there was a report, and actually Tim Fitzgerald reported on it yesterday, but Ian Fitzsimmons on ESPN was on SiriusXM College Sports Radio, and he said that Utah isn't exactly returning the phone calls with the Big 12. I don't know if there's any truth to that, any veracity to that at all.
They've been resistant the whole time.
But man, it sounds like even now, like it's kind of like Custer's last stand. Like the Titanic is going down, and they're allegedly not returning the calls from the Big 12. I don't know what to make about that.
If Brett Yormark thinks Utah's going to make the league better, that offer will stand even after this meeting today. I don't think, he doesn't strike me as the kind of person that would give two rips about what's happened in the past, but only about what could happen in the future. Don't get me wrong. By the way, I'd love to have Arizona State. I think it'd be great. Let's go through this again now through another day. We sort of did it yesterday. Best case scenario, right? For the Big 12. None of it's good for the Pac-12. Best case scenario for the Big 12. What do we think it would be? We'll do that next on Sports Daily. Welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily. We're making our way through conference realignment here in hour number one. Congratulations to Patrick for winning the HTO giveaway today. Enjoy some coffee and tea on us here at KFH and Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor with you. Jad Chambers producing. That IHOP hotline's open, by the way, 869-1240. All right, Tommy, best case scenarios here. I like the four corner schools. I mean, I think if you could get the four corner schools plus Washington and Oregon, that's probably the best case scenario. Is that too big? That would put you at, what would that put the Big 12 at? They're going back down to 12. Colorado makes 13. The four corners would make 17, 18, 19. You would need one more. UConn could make it 20. I'd be good with that. I'd be good with Stanford, like instead of UConn, whatever. But 20 is okay to me because you could go east, west, 10 and 10 and be done. I think that to me is the best case. I don't think it's the most likely. I think the most likely is only Arizona right now. I think the middle ground would be the four corner schools.
I think you're right. Honestly, I don't think that Oregon and Washington are realistic at all. So we can talk best case scenario, I guess, but I think that's more of a pipe dream than anything else. They want to go to the Big Ten. And I feel like that's been, pretty well understood for a while with them. So we talked about it yesterday. If the Big 12 offers Oregon and Washington, I think that it would have to be with the understanding that it may just be a short-term thing until the Big Ten is ready. And I'm not sure that's the best situation for the Big 12. I don't think it is. So I would say the four corner schools, that would get you to 16 schools total if you had the four corner schools, and then you could go 8 and 8. I believe that would be right. I think my math is right on that.
13 and then the other 3, yeah.
Would be 16, yeah. So I think that's, in my mind, probably the best bet. You could do 4 divisions of 4, and they could all work out regionally. I mean, you've got BYU already, and there's a built-in rivalry with Utah. Colorado's right there. Like, you've got different regional deals. You've got, out on the east side of the country with West Virginia and Cincinnati and UCF. I know Florida is a little bit of an anomaly in the Big 12, but I think that in my mind, that would be the best case scenario.
So the other one that's interesting is, okay, let's say it's Arizona and Arizona State and UConn, right? Like I'm in on UConn. I know a lot of people aren't. I'm in on UConn. I think at the end of the day, with the upgrade in league, UConn could elevate itself to a place in football that's respectable at minimum and offers so much in basketball and where it's located and its proximity to one of your main negotiators in a few years that you could make it work. Yormark's a New York City guy. Don't ever forget that, right? Like UConn's a big deal up there. Just about everybody I've known from New York City over the years, UConn's the team they follow. As far as like the team non-alumni, like team that you care about, like it's a big deal up there. And I think adding the basketball, here's what people may not want to hear. And I'm so glad that it's not the case anymore. The Big 12's fared just fine with a school that, focuses on basketball over the years, right? In Kansas. Kansas is one of the worst programs in the country. And nobody sat here and been like, oh, Kansas is a detriment to the Big 12, right? Nobody says that. Now their football team is finally turning it around, and it's going to be great. But I think UConn, in a similar way, could add to the Big 12, right? This incredible basketball brand that eventually is going to get better in football by proximity, right? Like just by the fact that you're able to play in the Big 12, you're going to attract a higher brand of player in recruiting. And if things go well and, the money's coming in and it's feeling good, maybe you do a facilities upgrade and maybe like all of those things. Because I think there's a basketball brand to be, had here. So I'm in on UConn, and I hope they don't leave these conversations.
If there is a basketball-only conversation, it wasn't that long ago that Gonzaga was brought up as a potential basketball-only
on the table, by the way.
School in the Big 12. I think that Brett Yormark, and he's doing this already, but you got to keep one eye on the West Coast and one eye on the East Coast. there's a very good chance the ACC could fall apart as well if Florida State and Clemson end up leaving to go to other conferences. So maybe you pick up the pieces in the ACC also. Then you're talking about really solid basketball programs. So there's a lot of different directions in the immediate future, though. I'm all in on the four corners. I think that if Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah follow Colorado, the Big 12 is in business.
Would you rather have Arizona State as a fully paid member or UConn as a member at a lesser rate?
Right now, Arizona State, I think, because of just the regional aspect of it, and I think it makes more sense right now. I'm not saying that UConn doesn't down the road, but right now I'm going to go with the four corners.
All right, let's come back here. We'll take our first hour break. We can get back to this if there's any breaking news. Could come at any point here with that meeting happening sometime soon. And then we will get into training camp and the Major League Baseball trade deadline as well in the second hour. Anything you want to talk about? 869-1240. We'll bounce around today. Stay cool out there, everybody. It's going to be super, super hot. We'll give away some Wind Surge vouchers in the second hour. Lots still to come here on Sports Daily. It's Albracht and Castor. We'll be right back.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. It's Sports Daily. It's Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor. It is Jad Chambers producing. It is you listening to us on KFH. We appreciate it, as well as the Odyssey app if you're streaming us, or if I'm looking to the future and you're listening to us in a podcast version. We appreciate that as well. You can also watch our video stream, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Glad to be here with you here on this Tuesday that feels ominous for college athletics. It is a Major League Baseball trade deadline. NFL training camp injuries just continue to roll in, and it is an election day. It's also the Women's World Cup, Tommy. Let's start there real briefly. We haven't talked a lot about the Women's World Cup. That is because I don't know anything about soccer, and most of the time I don't make a lot of sense when I try to talk about it. But the women's team did advance to the knockout stages. Plenty of room for improvement. So, the takeaways that I gather from people are that we need to be playing better. I've sort of put this self-imposed ban because Adriana Franch, the Salina native, isn't on the team this year. Which, I'm a big AD fan. But no, I look, I don't watch these games. I have not watched any of these games just yet. They're sort of on at a different time. Of course, I'm rooting for the USA in our juggernaut team that we have had over the years with the women's national team and all the, things that they've accomplished. But have you been tuning in at all, Tommy, or are you just sort of like observing from afar?
Yeah, following up on, results and things like that. I know that there was a 0-0 tie with the U.S. Women's national team this morning. It sounds like Carly Lloyd, not happy, went on after the game and kind of criticized the coaching and the performance of the team. So I don't exactly know where they go from here, but there is a little bit of intrigue surrounding that.
What do you think about the spray paint speckled jerseys they've been wearing? And I don't. Are they called jerseys in soccer? Whatever they are, the shirts, the jerseys. Do you like the spray paint?
Aren't they called
splatter
kits?
look?
I think they're called kits, by the way. Yeah.
Sweaters. No, that's hockey.
That's hockey. They're fine. I don't get too riled up about that sort of thing. It's fine. I'll take it.
I like him. I'm a uniform guy. Like I like to look at uniforms and give them a yay or a nay. I'm actually in on these. I think these are pretty cool. I think sometimes our soccer teams miss the boat a little bit in uniforms, but I kind of like these. And Olympics too. I'm like, we could have done better than that. We're the USA. Come on now. All these apparel companies exist here anyway. But yeah, I'm kind of in on it. Good luck to the U.S. women's national team. We hope that, of course, they take the gold in the Women's World Cup. Looking forward to the World Cup coming here to the U.S. soon. And trying my best to get into it and be all in and be all about it and enjoy soccer. I certainly, as most people have, I think over the years, enjoyed the women's brand of U.S. soccer a little bit more than men because they've had so much success. NFL, Tommy, this is interesting. It is an interesting time of year. We have major holdouts all over the league. Josh Jacobs not there. Now Jonathan Taylor with his drama. We see this everywhere. I think Joe Burrow's situation is going to get interesting now with his injury. Does he get a contract done before he ever comes back onto the field? I think that's something to watch. But arguably, right now, across the league, the most impactful holdout by far exists in St. Joe right now with Chris Jones. And there isn't just a whole lot of chatter about it. Now, I don't know if it's this overwhelming spotlight that has come on to the running back position lately. I suspect that that's what it is. But rarely, Tommy, do we have a holdout to the caliber of Chris Jones, who is in the conversation for the best player in football on his side of the ball. Rarely do we get that as under the radar as this is felt. I think a part of it is that people just assume this is going to get done still, but it's not. We've assumed that now for months and months and months. It's been a little strange with Jones out and just everyone's sort of like, whatever.
I think it's okay, though, for it to not be super vocal and in the press, because even if there is, some animosity is probably a strong word, disagreements between Jones's camp and the Chiefs, I think it's better for both parties if they're handling that behind the scenes as opposed to it playing out in public, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
I don't
okay
mean
with it
playing out
being
in
quiet.
public. I just mean I don't think people are really talking about it outside of Kansas City very much.
What else is there to talk about? I mean, like there's really,
The
you've pretty much
implications
already.
of him not being there
No,
potentially.
I know, but like it's nothing has changed, right? Like we know the Quinnen Williams deal. We know where Aaron Donald stands. We know that Chris Jones probably more than likely wants to be closer to Aaron Donald than Quinnen Williams. And the number of years, that's probably the hang up somewhere in there. And now he goes to work with the Chiefs to try to figure out a deal to make it happen. And we talked about implications, but really, really the only new thing every day is another $50,000 fine each day on training camp. There's really nothing else to talk about until one side or the other decides to go public with something.
I know, but Tommy, we speculate about everything, right? Like we do this. What are these running backs and what? But the reality is, like, Chris Jones and a holdout would have a far greater impact, I think, than any of these players because he's that big a deal on that side of the ball. Maybe Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs has a case to make for the year he had last year, but like if running backs have replacement value, defensive tackles don't. And I think there is also too much. It's not credit. Credit's not the right word. I think we just assume too much that, they'll just figure it out because Chris Jones loves Kansas City and he's great and they love him. But I do think, man, like the Chiefs have shown us in the past that they're willing to let a star walk away who wants too much money. They have to do business that way to some degree because of, the rest of the roster. And that's what happens when you're super talented in the NFL. It's just odd to me that in a world where we speculate on everything, nobody is talking about the possibility of, well, what if they don't come to an agreement? Right? Like,
Yeah.
it has to exist, right? The possibility has to exist here. So what if they didn't come to an agreement? And you and I talk about it because I think that this has been strange for months and months now. And I know that the Chiefs are capable of, doing things that are uncomfortable. Now, again, I don't think that's going to happen here. I think they'll get the deal done too. But we're into week 2 now, and we're hearing nothing from either side here. And again, I don't think we can just ignore the fact that I don't think Chris Jones just all of a sudden woke up one day and said, you know what? All that stuff we've been working on for months, now I want $30 million. I think that's what he's wanted the whole time, right? And so the Quinnen Williams deal certainly didn't help his case, but it's not like this is new territory. They've been working this for a really long time. Let's go to the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. We got Earl on the line, resident Chiefs fan. Earl, what's up this morning? How are you?
Hey, just quick query, right? Chris Jones is under contract this year, correct?
He is.
He is.
He is. So, he can either decide to sit out this year and lose all that money and be franchised next year, or he can, if he doesn't get what he likes, he's got to show up and play, right? If he wants to get paid. So, his extension stuff is all on him at this point. We don't say a lot about it because just like the cheetah, what can we do? If the dude doesn't want to come in and play, well, and as you astutely said before, we wouldn't trade him right now. We would wait until it rolled around next year because he is still under contract for a year. He may come in disgruntled or whatever, but if he's trying to get more money, maybe he could play the second year in his career without an injury. But, he has no leverage, man. He's under contract for this year. The renegotiation was always clouded or guised as in if we can rework this contract, maybe we can free up some money for, a D-Hop or something like that. And since none of that happened, well, what is the Chiefs' obligation then to turn around and do that for him? I don't think a lot. I mean,
similar to Tyreek Hill, because you can either get, if that scenario played out and he played disgruntled this year, that's fine, but he's going to walk away as a free agent. The other option right now is you can trade him and get something for him, and so there is a piece of it there. Like if he does come back and play disgruntled, right, and because he needs to get the service time in, you can't not be a free agent next year.
And he doesn't become a free agent next year. We still have his rights next year. That's why
he's unrestricted in 24.
I have a really
he's unrestricted
difficult time.
in 24. So he has this year. He's UFA.
I've got a really
he's
difficult
an
time
free
thinking
agent in 24.
Really difficult time thinking that the Chiefs are going to franchise tag him after this year, just because that price tag is so high. I mean, it's like $34 million, which is more than what even Aaron Donald is making on his deal. I have a hard time thinking that they will franchise tag him. So to me, it would make sense that if he plays his final year, they don't reach a long-term extension, then at that point, the Chiefs maybe look at trading him.
Well, and the thing is, even when they franchise tag him, they don't have to pay him. But if somebody comes in and swoops in and gives him a deal, we get some picks out of the thing. So,
the franchise tag, by the way, this year for a defensive tackle was just under 19 million. So it's not quite that high. I mean,
and we didn't tag him. So
that average franchise tag for that position is going to end up being around $34 million.
How can it jump that? It's the average of the top 5 highest paid, I think.
And
I will find that and I will send it to you.
And Aaron's at like 30, so I don't know how. But
it'll be around. I don't know what Quinnen Williams is, but it's the average of the top 5 at the position. So and at the franchise tag, he's not going to play. Again, it's just, I think there is enough of a track record with the Tyreek Hill deal to just consider, because I think this all gets done and it's fine. Like, I think both sides work through this. Don't misunderstand. It's just odd now that we're 2 weeks in and nobody seems to be considering the possibility that the Chiefs could go the same route they went with Tyreek Hill, that just says, you know what, that's just going to be too much money. Let's get a good draft pick out of it and we'll adjust and we'll go on with the future. I think it's at least worth a conversation. I don't think it's going to happen.
But he's going to play this year if he wants to get paid, needs of the service. And if he's stuck on a number and we offer him, just below Aaron Donald and above the second place guy, I mean, we're in the same situation as we were at the Cheetah, because he wanted to set the market, right? So, there ain't a lot we can do as fans. We just sit there. We're not bankers. We'll let those guys handle that. But he's under contract. He's got to play this year. At the very least, we get this year out of him. And if he's motivated, right, maybe he's even better than he was last year. But there just isn't a lot to talk about, because there isn't a darn thing we can do other than sit back and hope the old boy shows up. So Chief on in 23.
So if you go back and you look at kind of the way that the franchise tag is all put together, it's a little bit misleading because of the way that it's all calculated based on the cap hit and all of that. I was a little bit off when I said 34 million. It's actually $32.5 million, which is still more than what Aaron Donald is getting per year. There's not a chance, in my mind at least, that the Chiefs franchise tag him when his contract is up.
So I've always understood the franchise tag, and I'm looking at a definition, the exclusive one, not the non-exclusive, and as it's represented by the top 5 salaries at the respective position once that free agency hits, and you can't negotiate with anybody else. So that's the way I've always understood it. He's earned. Now I don't know if what he earns this year has an impact on it. Maybe that's the difference here, because he will earn 20 and 5 on his base this year. I don't know. Tagging him next year doesn't make sense because of his age and because he wouldn't take it.
Right.
Like that's the reason that the tag hasn't made sense to me. And we appreciate the call, Earl, as always, when it comes to the Chiefs. And again, I don't think it's going to come to this. I think at some point you just have to figure out the years on this, and you have to massage out what it does with the Mahomes deal. and you have to also consider the free agents that will be coming down the road. We've talked about that, at nauseum here. Like, what does a Chris Jones extension at that cost do to your possibility of re-signing these great young offensive linemen? And that's what the Chiefs are having to weigh out here. There's nothing about this to me that would be, it's not that the Chiefs don't think Chris Jones is amazing and a model citizen and a great teammate and all these things. Of course he is. The problem is, what does giving him that much money mean for everybody else? And that's what these teams have to constantly negotiate. That's why they're not willing to give the running backs money at its core, right? Because they feel like they can, find other guys for cheaper that will allow them to still sign at other positions where it's more expensive. So, I think there's resolution here. I don't know when it comes, though, and I don't really care. But I do, as we hear from Felix Anudike-Uzama yesterday, I always am like, well, could this team, and we've asked this question too, could this team win a Super Bowl if Chris Jones isn't there? I think the answer to that is a very overwhelming and obvious yes, they could. Is there a more impactful player on that side of the ball that enhances their chances? No, there's not. But for the long term, and again, the Chiefs are unique in this. I think there are teams all the time that are willing to sell out for 1 year. The Rams did it, right? Boy, the Chiefs aren't that team, though. You don't do that when you have the window of Mahomes. If you're the Chiefs, you never do that. So the Patriots never did that with Brady, right? They let guys walk all the time because they knew their window was so long. For teams where the window is super short, you sign Chris, like the Jets right now are desperate. This would be a very easy decision for the Jets to make right now, right? Like that's a simple no-brainer for them. The Chiefs, I don't think, are forced to operate that way. So I do think it's 2 weeks of a holdout here. We can start to wonder about some of these things because it's still not solved. And, they've been working on this, Tommy, since the end of last season, right? So since March, I suppose, they've been trying to get this figured out and they can't get it done yet.
I think the bottom line for me is that if the Chiefs don't come to a long-term agreement with Chris Jones, 3 years, 4 years, whatever that is, at whatever dollar amount, if they are unable to come to a resolution on a long-term contract, I would say before the season starts, then at that point, and I'm even taking off the table, like I don't even know what Chris Jones would do this season. Like, would he break his holdout and play anyway? Would he hold out? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But if they don't
hold out into the season,
if they don't come to a long-term deal after this season, I think you've got to try to find value for him where you can before he walks in free agency. I think you're looking at maybe a trade possibility there. I think there would be a lot of suitors that would want him, and then, maybe have an opportunity that whatever team that trades for him, they sign him to a longer term deal. But I don't see the Chiefs signing him to the franchise tag because of the cost. And I don't see Chris Jones wanting to play on the franchise tag. So at that point, I think you've got to try to get value for him where you can if you don't come to a long-term deal before the season starts.
Chris Jones would give you 3 years, $90 million. I mean, that's the easy answer.
Yeah.
We'll give you 3 years, $90 million. We're not giving you 4. We can't give you 4. It's just absolutely at a business decision level. We can't do it. It's going to keep us from signing too many guys. Okay. So if Jones isn't there, maybe the pressure isn't on anybody on the defense, but it's on the offense to score more. Certainly the Chiefs are good to go in that category with number 15 under center. Mitch Holthus had a chance to talk to Patrick Mahomes. Mitch sending some of this audio to us through Steve and Ted in the morning. Jad's got it for us. This is a part of the conversation. Mitch alluding basically to Mahomes being another coach on the field out there.
Really, if you look at Watson, Justin Watson, Marquez, Sky, and even KT, they're really all going into their second year within this offense. And even though they've been other places with some of those guys, it's still a whole new offense. So I think those guys, you can see that step they've taken. And then integrating the young guys in there with Justin Ross and with Rice and John Ross. I mean, we have so many young receivers that have kind of really added that value to that receiving room. And I'm excited for the competition going into training camp.
And then the tight ends group and the running back group, what about that in the receiving game?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna make Brett Veach's jobs tough. I mean, if you look at the tight end group as a whole, I mean, everybody's been making plays, running backs as well, and then getting to add Pac and Jarek in the mix. I mean, it's gonna be a heck of a offensive room, and it's gonna be a lot of competition. And I think competition brings out greatness, and that's what we're looking for.
There it is. Look, the Chiefs are fine. They're fine because they have that guy. And that's the reality that probably complicates this more, to be quite honest. The one thing I'll say is with Tyreek Hill, it wasn't complicated. The Chiefs made that decision like that. They haven't done that here. So again, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they figure out a way to get this done with Chris Jones. Get him paid in the short term, still preserve their ability to lock guys up in the long term. And don't ever forget, 15's contract's got to get redone sometime too. And thank goodness for Brett Veach and those guys. He's willing to do it at a team-friendly level, relatively speaking. All right. So that's there. We've had a ton of injuries in NFL training camp. We'll get to a little bit. They're impactful to the division, certainly, and just across the league as we make our way through it. We'll look over that. Major League Baseball trade deadline still winding down here. Nothing big today that we've seen. The Royals a little bit active here at the deadline. We expect them to be a little more active, but we'll continue the conversation, tell you about the trade they made yesterday and what could be coming today as Sports Daily continues on this Tuesday.
think I want to hear this.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
Welcome back in, everybody. It is Sports Daily here on KFH. Glad to be here with you on this Tuesday, on this election day, on this Major League Baseball trade deadline day. Lots going on. Speaking of the trade deadline, the Royals make another move. They send the reliever Jose Cuas to the Chicago Cubs for Nelson Velasquez, who you've probably never heard of. He is described, and I've seen this multiple times, he's kind of that, not AAA, but 4A type player. He's fringy. Hit 241 in the big leagues this season. Very small sample size. So I get it. It's sort of a swap for a swap. I don't know that Cuas was going to bring much. They're making moves. They're trying to get pieces and maybe a reclamation project here for a guy that has had some pop. No issue with the deal. Doesn't move the needle at all for me, Tommy. I think that, we're still clinging to, Barlow and Hernandez potentially bringing. I mean, what do we hope for? Somebody's a top 5 prospect from somebody within their system. I mean, is that a tangible goal here that we can hope for the Royals? Is that it's not another, AAA player that, isn't going to last? That's kind of what we're seeing here. But when it comes to their 2 remaining most valuable trade assets, I think you've got to start shooting for some prospects here. And somebody's top 5 feels like a decent benchmark.
I'm wondering if really at the end of the day, the Royals are having a hard time getting the offers that they want in return for Barlow and Hernandez, right? So, and JJ Piccolo has, said as much. He did an interview yesterday where, he said that it almost seems like they're having a harder time getting the guys that they would like. And that's always the way it's going to be at the trade deadline, right? Like people are going to be playing hardball for a while until you get down to the final couple of hours left in the for trading. And at that point, all bets are off. But, I don't know. I think that this last trade, getting the minor leaguer from the Cubs, okay. I mean, you traded a kind of a middling pitcher that isn't going to do a whole lot for you long-term for a guy that maybe can come in and do something for you down the road. Really, it's been extremely underwhelming so far, I would say, for the Royals and trades. They can still make that up today.
Well,
they can do something with Barlow and Hernandez.
Because they don't have a lot to trade is the problem, right? And that's one of the most disappointing things about this year is it just hasn't produced that. Like, in years past, they've been able to, salvage some of these veterans and move those guys. And I still haven't. I need to gone to look at what they got last year and how any of those players have fared. But, you're not trading Bobby Witt Jr. So Salvador Perez, we've discussed, why that's a challenge. And then that's it. That was it. Other than the guys we see, Chapman was the most tradable piece, and they got a good return, I think, on Chapman. I'm fine with their return on Chapman. Desperation, you hope, works to their favor. The best thing that could have happened to the Royals, by the way, is that the Angels became buyers and not sellers because they've been as active as anybody. That's putting pressure not only on Texas but now on Houston, who might become a buyer. That's been the best thing to me. To the sellers was the Angels' decision. The Cubs are adding, the Mets are subtracting, which has been an interesting development. And then you've got teams that are sort of doing both, and the AL East has stayed competitive. So there should be enough of a market out there where somebody, as the deadline approaches and they haven't made the move yet, gets just a little bit more desperate maybe than they would have been yesterday at 5:00. And so hopefully for the Royals' sake, as we get closer to, isn't it a 5:00 deadline today? Once we approach that somebody's missed out on somebody. Like for the Royals, the best case scenario is that the Astros, some combination of 2 of the Astros, Angels, and Rangers keep making moves here, and it adds pressure to the third where they're like, all right, we got to go get Barlow or Hernandez or both. Like we got to go. And that's the other thing too. Let me say this. If I'm the Royals too, I shop those guys together first. I want one good prospect. I don't need a handful of meh unless they're super young. I'll give you both of these guys if we can at least get a prospect that projects as an everyday player, right? Like,
Yeah.
take both these relievers, because that does help a lot of teams to get both of those
Yeah.
guys.
And there are a couple of other teams that are now no longer sellers where the reliever market is getting a little bit smaller. The Padres, for example, it doesn't look
Mhm.
like they're going to sell. I think they're going to go for it. They swept the Rangers, as you know, over the weekend. And, so that kind of puts them back into a place where they feel like they can challenge for a wild card spot. And there were a couple of pitchers that had been, I think, on the market. Josh Hader, one of them. And it sounds like the Padres were listening to offers on him, but their price tag was way too high. And I think ultimately he's going to stay there. So the more you've got teams that are not selling their assets away, you're going to have a little bit of a better market for your relievers. And so I think things like that, that's definitely good for the Royals, because we've known that they're going to be sellers all along. There are only a handful of teams in Major League Baseball that we knew that about. I mean, as early as probably May, that they were going to be sellers. So if you can weed out all the teams that were right on the fringe, that does make the market better for your guys.
Yeah, it is. There is reason for, small optimism today if you're the Royals. They still have to execute it, right? They still have to get it right. And there is a ton of pressure on this front office. I don't think they've had a real opportunity to do much this year with what they've got. The Chapman deal was fine. I actually, you know what? Let me say this, because we haven't given them much credit for anything this year. I do give them credit for going and being aggressive and making that move early. Now you have to time this right, because at this point, doesn't it just become a timing issue? Like, how do you time this to where you either, one of two things, let a team feel like they're getting a leg up on their direct competitor by getting the deal done, or you catch the other side of it and catch that team in desperation as they feel like, we got to do something. Like, we have to do something now. The Royals are in a position of strength. You still got to execute, though. And, Quas for Velasquez, that's not the needle mover. I would imagine if Velasquez has any impact in Kansas City, it will be as like a fourth outfielder, right? And
Yeah.
that's fine, but it doesn't do anything for the overall trajectory or future of this franchise.
How many times have you said the phrase, the Royals are in a position of strength? I mean, you just said that. Like, that hasn't happened.
Definitely not any times this year.
Recently, right? Like, but I do agree with you that they, and maybe a position of strength is a little bit too far to go. But they are at least in a position where it can be fair. The trade can be fair. They shouldn't. And this is where I'm going to come back to when we do the post-mortem on the trade deadline. If the Royals get fleeced with these relievers that are still on the market with Barlow and Hernandez, at that point, that is a total indictment of JJ Piccolo in the front office, a total indictment, because they are in a position right now. And I don't, like I said, I don't know if I would go so far to say they're in a position of strength, but at least for it to be fair, a trade to be fair for them. If they get fleeced for them, like the Nicky Lopez trade, if that duplicates with Scott Barlow and Carlos Hernandez, at that point, get rid of everybody in the front office, because it didn't have to be that way.
Well, it's just like, you have to have something. Like, the only hope right now in the organization is Bobby Witt Jr. You got to have something, right? And if you're going to be this bad, you have to at least improve the farm system. And then you had the draft, and the perception on the draft was awful. Whatever. We'll see how that pans out. There just hasn't been anything. And so, yeah, maybe getting a decent type prospect back at the deadline this year, because let's also be honest, Tommy, like Barlow and Hernandez they're not the biggest names on the market by any means.
No.
They're just handy for somebody, and maybe even more than that, out of desperation. Like, I'll talk to you as a Rangers fan right now. I feel like the Rangers are in a position to be just a little bit desperate, to go do something like that. These aren't frontline, can't miss, whatever guys. But man, they need so much that it's like, would I be okay as a fan of that organization to overpay just a little bit to get those guys if I can't get something else done? Like if I can't get Josh Hader at the back end, maybe I can get somebody at the front end of the bullpen to push everybody back a slot or so. Yes, yes, absolutely. And you've got to do that if you're the Royals.
I'll tell you also, as a Braves fan, they've got the best record in baseball. Their bullpen needs some help. They've had a lot of injuries in that bullpen. Guys like Dylan Lee and AJ Minter and Joe Jimenez have all went down with injuries. And if you're going to make a deep run to a pennant and then a World Series, you need to have some good back end bullpen help. They went out and they picked up, I think, 1 or 2 relievers in the past couple of weeks or so, but you could always use some more. And we know that the Braves and Royals have a pipeline, at least of talking about trades. They did it with Nicky Lopez. The Braves have a pretty deep farm system. That's why it was so surprising that Nicky Lopez, the Royals didn't demand a prospect in return, and they got a below average or I guess bad left-handed major league pitcher reliever in that return. So I don't know. Like I would be okay too. If a team like the Braves went after guys like Scott Barlow and Carlos Hernandez, there should be a fairly robust market for those 2 pitchers. And the Royals have got to get something in return for them where you can look back on it and say, okay, that made sense.
The problem I have is I don't know how much or how attractive those players are to other teams right now. Like I don't have the time to sit there and compare them to every other reliever that's on the market right now. So that matters too, in fairness. Like where do they rank with the pool of eligible people? But waiting till right before the deadline does seem like the most advantageous thing for them to do. So you can, like, I think their best case is to get somebody who feels like they got to just get something done. And if they do them both together or separately, whatever gets them at least one player you feel like could be an everyday player at the big day level, at the big league level. That's what you got to get. 869-1240 Royals fans, what do you think there? We'll come back with some of the other headlines of the day as we make our way through this Tuesday election day edition of Sports Daily. All right, welcome back in to Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor here. Let's give away some Win Surge vouchers. Let's do it. Here we go. First caller, 4 vouchers to a Win Surge game. That means you get to pick the tickets of your choice. You cash those in, you go to the game whenever you want. 869-1240, 4 vouchers. Right now, first caller to the IHOP hotline, Jad Chambers, will get that for us. Some injuries, Tommy, across football. Tim Patrick, a big injury. Zach Moss, not sure if we talked about this or if this happened yesterday, I think after we got off the air. So the Jonathan Taylor drama happening, and then his backup running back breaks his arm in practice. If Taylor didn't have leverage before, perhaps he does now. This is that time of year with these injuries where you just sort of hold your breath a little bit.
Yeah, it is. And again, we talked about it yesterday in regards to Chiefs training camp, how grueling it is. But you're going to have injuries that pop up. The ones that are the worst are the non-contact ones, like Tim Patrick tore his Achilles out for the entire season. And it's like back-to-back years that this guy has basically not been able to play. And he had a ton of potential with the Broncos. That's a big blow. KJ Hamler stepped away as well. So all of a sudden that receiving core for Russell Wilson and Sean Payton getting a little bit thinner. I'm really intrigued about what's going to happen in Indianapolis. It doesn't look like Jonathan Taylor wants to be there at all anymore, and I don't blame him. But then you've got Zach Moss, the backup, breaking his arm. That leaves Deion Coleman as basically the only guy in the running back room in Indianapolis. So there's a lot of intrigue, a lot to follow as we move further into training camp.
Yeah, I don't think anything's going to, the Colts aren't going to give him a big deal now. And his options become the most interesting. I hear mixed reviews on whether he has leverage or not. I mean, I think he does, but at the end of the day, maybe he doesn't because he's still got to get this year of service time in there. I don't know. Right. I hope they can. I love him as a player. I hope they can get this thing figured out. Speaking of injuries, we wait on Kadarius Toney. I wondered this because yesterday the Chiefs rolled out Felix Anudike-Uzomah and Rashee Rice. And I wondered at that point, I was like, I wonder which rookie's going to have a bigger impact this year. Because Felix missed OTAs and he's got to have some like warm-up time and they're changing schemes. He was a 3-4 in. Now they're going to the 4-3. Rice has this opportunity. It made me wonder, I wonder if Rice doesn't end up having the bigger impact as a rookie. Not saying like overall or long-term or anything, but we don't talk a lot about him yet, and he's looked good at camp by all accounts, and definitely has an opportunity here, I think, to step in. Rice is, we're fond, I am especially, of Sky Moore, but if I'm Rice, I'm like, man, like I got a chance to be the one here right now coming in.
I do think that Rashee Rice will be the most impactful rookie on this team going into this season. And honestly, I don't even know if Felix Anudike-Uzomah is going to be number 2. He might be number 3, because I think that Deneric Prince may be the number 2 most impactful rookie this season for the Chiefs. That undrafted free agent. It sounds like he's getting tons of accolades during training camp. Everybody loves him. I don't know why he wasn't drafted. I'm not sure
That
what
always
his draft
happens
stock
with Chiefs
was.
running back at camp, don't you think, though? Like, I think
Yeah,
back to Kareem. Everybody loved Kareem Hunt, and everybody loved, Isaiah Pacheco, and now everybody loves. But I think it's just because the way the offense is designed, like you envision how a versatile back could, play through it. It's all about Pacheco, and maybe Prince is better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't know. I think Felix needs to be better than that. I just don't know. Like what I threw the number out yesterday around the office, like over under sack total 5. That would be satisfactory for him in a rookie year. He just has like there's a lot for him to, they drafted him almost and have acknowledged it's like we're drafting him for him to grow into this, right? Which is
Right.
a little different than you see NFL teams do with first round picks. If Chris Jones comes back, that pressure is not going to be there because we expect a big step forward from Karlaftis too. I do, again, when we talk about money down the road, like you do envision this world of Karlaftis and Felix Anudike-Uzomah. You've spent first round picks on one of the most expensive positions in football the last 2 years. And I know that's a position that, goes to free agency quite often, but I hope Felix is, more impactful than Prince. I think Rice, I'm with you on Rice. I do think Rice ends up being the guy that wows us the most, probably as a rookie.
They've got obviously the investment into Felix Anudike-Uzomah. They wouldn't have taken him in the first round if they didn't feel like he was going to be an impactful player. But to your point, it doesn't sound like he's going to be coming in right away and potentially being this game-wrecking defensive end. I think that, again, growing into it, getting through those rookie growing pains, that's going to be important for him. But I don't know. I might even stay away entirely from the over-under on that sack total that you put out at 5, because I don't know how much playing time he's going to get right away. I think towards the end of the season, he'll get more.
He'll start.
But the first few weeks, I just don't know.
Well, he had the unfortunate injury they had to work through. Now he's got to learn everything in training camp. And we do know, history tells us, guys grow into Spags' defenses as a season goes on because they're complicated in whatever else. Chiefs defenses typically get better as the year goes on. And it is unfair to expect anything else from Felix, who played almost like a different position in college, right? Like when you talk about the 3-4 and the 4-3 and you hear, football players talk about those differences, it's massive. It is a massive, massive difference when you talk about those two things. One thing that, Felix did confirm is that he will keep his sack dance from college. So that's good news for K-State fans.
That's good to know. I was worried about that.
We all love seeing that. It's a boring time at Chiefs camp. It really is. It is a hold your breath and hope nobody gets hurt time. Keep an eye on Chris Jones, as we've been talking about. And then there's Kadarius Toney, Tommy. I don't know. What week do you think? Like, make a prediction right now. When do you think he plays his first game this year?
Week 6, week 7, something like that.
Yeah. I'm feeling that way too. I'm thinking like October.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like there's just been this creeping doubt. And I know they say maybe, but it's because we're hoping for the beginning of the season. There's a hope for the beginning of the season. Like nobody's definitively coming out and be like, oh yeah, he'll be ready week 1. Like Joe Burrow, it's like we're pretty sure he'll be ready week 1, right? Nobody's really saying that for Toney, which makes me think this thing probably will take a lot longer than we're being led on. And so, for guys like Rashee Rice and Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, and maybe this is the opportunity Justin Ross has been waiting for forever, right? I mean, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting room. I can't wait to watch that group in the preseason. I can't wait to watch just at, a small level of how Andy Reid moves them around, because I think he'll show some of that to let those guys get the reps doing it. I do think we'll see some of the creativity with those guys laid out there. But we're about 12 days away from that first preseason game. The Chiefs get 3 of them. We'll have them all on 12 News. We're excited about that. Congratulations to Mike, who is going to see the Wind Surge, courtesy of us here on Sports Daily. He gets a 4-pack of vouchers to go see the Surge game of his choice. Mike, one of our 2 winners today. Patrick, the other. He gets his hands on some HTO iced tea and coffee. So congratulations to everybody. We will have more giveaways throughout the summer here as we make our way through the dog days. We're going to give things away as often as we can. And that'll include Thunder tickets here before too long,
Yep.
Tommy.
Yeah, we're getting close. A couple months away from that season. I wanted to point out, I'm refreshing my Twitter feed left and right. I'm not seeing anything out of the Pac-12 yet. So it might happen a little bit later. I mean, it's on lockdown right now. I don't know anything.
I think this is about the time it was supposed to start, or maybe a little bit ago. But yeah, it's going to get leaked out real quick. All those guys they're going to be really mad or really excited. Both of those scenarios present a pretty good chance we're going to get some information soonish. All right, 869-1240. We'll come back. We'll put a bow on this edition, tell you what's on tap today here on the network as Sports Daily wraps up this Tuesday.
I stopped smoking when Mark Patrick said.
All right, that does it for us. Albracht and Castor out until tomorrow. Congratulations to our giveaway winners. All eyes on two things today, that Major League Baseball trade deadline and whatever it is that comes out of those Pac-12 meetings. You can bet we'll talk about it tomorrow. Jim Rome after us at 11, Bob and Jeff from 2 to 4, regular programming on CBS Sports Radio until 7 o'clock when the Royals and the Mets square off right here on KFH. Happy Election Day, everybody. Stay cool out there. For Jad Chambers and Tommy Castor, I'm Jacob Albracht, trying to stay awake. We'll see you tomorrow.